Honestly, Noblesse doesn't get a lot of credit in this anime season, and it is a different style of anime. It's not going to hit everyone's niche and what they want from the medium. But there's a lot of things you can really appreciate with Noblesse, and one of the new ones that you can definitely appreciate is the take on Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein's monster, I'm honestly thinking about it because I was ready to come up here and say, wow, this is a really fun take on Frankenstein's monster. And at first, I just kind of assumed there's been multiple versions of a fascinating tale that uses that design in a new and unique way. But honestly, thinking about it, I honestly feel like every time I see Frankenstein in any sort of show, they're always pretty much the same idea in design. A modified, seemingly modified normal human who can use powers very, very similar to that of the nobles. That's such a weird anomaly, which is now putting into perspective why everyone has viewed Frankenstein as such a weird entity, because this probably has never happened up until whatever it is he's done. The idea that he was a noble hunter who chained up nobles and seemingly experimented on them, maybe draining or testing their DNA, injecting it into himself, because he's sick of these creatures that can harness and control humans. And while some are saying, no, we only make pacts with those who want to make the pacts, we know damn well those with power will always abuse it, especially if you have a title like noble. You know, the nobility have always done bad shit across the board, across the universe, across history. There's always been some bad apples. So you know damn well that women and children and people alike were getting probably sexually and physically assaulted just because they have this ability and they can do so. Not all of them, but some of them, and you can see how a human would take that to heart and try to use his skills to whatever it can be in order to take revenge. To see what they're able to accomplish, and I've heard a lot of hype behind Frankenstein, and to really see what he's capable of, especially considering how they were directing this episode, introducing some grandpa, and I'm like, okay, clearly related to our Regis as well as Sierra. I was like, okay, clearly that's going to be some sort of connection, but the hostility between him and Frankenstein I thought was very weird, because I was like, you're introducing someone who clearly has a lot of history, but this hasn't really been a show that's seen really all that much of a flashback. So I was totally expecting there to just be this, like, mystery that probably wouldn't get touched upon until maybe the end of the season. And to my surprise, they actually gave us a decent amount of backstory. And it's very interesting seeing the difference of, like, especially seeing our boy, Rizel, just, you know, going into a throne room, them saying, hey, come live with us. No, I don't want to. We got girls. No, I don't want to. And then he leaves. I'm like, okay, so clearly even back in the day he had a lot of skill and power, but people wanted him around, but he was very isolated and very antisocial. So how does this tie into our boy Frankenstein? You get a little bit after the credits there, him wearing his clothes, being like, hey, those are my clothes. And he's like, oh, gets all embarrassed in Frankenstein fashion. Probably has no idea who Rizel is at this moment. But it's very fascinating to see this episode and compared to all the actions we've seen up until this point. And it really paints a different picture on why certain characters had such a response or lack of response to someone like Frankenstein. I firmly was believing that Frankenstein was a modified creation based on Rizel, and maybe that still is the truth. I don't know, like maybe we'll kick in next week and Frankenstein's already known about Rizel and Rizel has made Frankenstein. I don't think so, but it seems like what it is most likely they work together after meeting up, and I'm going to be interested to see what that brings and what they'll be able to accomplish with their pairing, especially considering that we're seeing a lot of things before the Awakening OVA, which is a nice change of pace, I have to say. Like, there was some great action in this episode, but the thing that caught me was just really uncovering so many mysteries while introducing new characters and just seeing so many things unfold. There was a lot of lore and world building taking place in pretty elegant and natural ways through pieces of dialogue, without it feeling like info dump just dropping it on you and saying, okay, have fun trying to decipher all this because we rushed through 30 chapters of a webtoon. Rather, it felt to me like just these conversations, because of what we've seen up until this point, it's very easy to piece together what they're talking about and what they're saying. While watching this episode, I started feeling like maybe this would have been a great debut episode for this anime after coming off of Awakening. But actually thinking about it, seeing these characters up until this point, it really does allow us to piece together all this dialogue very naturally. And if this was rearranged to be an episode 1 for the season, it would have felt like info dump. But because we have all the knowledge up until this point, yeah, there's a lot of new pieces at play. It allows for us to piece it together in our head in very natural ways, and it really is something I have to commend in my honest opinion. The fight was amazing. It wasn't as good as the big badass fight that I compared to the OVA Awakening in terms of its animation, but it was definitely pretty close to it. I love seeing someone who honestly was already pretty much a badass be even more of a badass and make his previous actions look basic in comparison, especially when you consider this old man is saying, hey, you really do hide your fangs around your master. I'm like, oh, where is this going here? And to see him go up against a clan leader, and supposedly these clan leaders, they never double team an opponent, right? It's like, no, one clan leader should always be enough for any opponent. If it takes two, we are a disgrace. And this one is like completely ready to die. I have an error already set out. It doesn't matter if I die. And I'm like, holy shit. They are very loyal to the cause. It's understandable when you're hearing about a human who's apparently, killing your kind, and that shouldn't even happen. But to see the rage and to see how well they're going up, and then the soul weapons get released, and then he releases his own version, which isn't a soul weapon, but close to it. So then the old man has to come in with a giant ass club, and I'm like, Noblesse is just doing some insane shit here. But I can't say I'm not enjoying it. It was just a very big visual treat. I love the purples and the electricity. And honestly, the struggle, and it almost felt like a werewolf creation going off when Frankenstein was kind of like being consumed by this like purple aura. It felt like he was being injected with some sort of like electricity. And honestly, it reminded me of like Electro from Spider-Man, the way it was going up his skin. I was like, it was a little creepy, a little unhinged, but goddamn, do they have fun with the visuals. You can say that maybe some of the bigger moments, they should have came a bit sooner in the show to be a bit more exciting. To be honest, I do still really appreciate the direction this season took for Noblesse. It's definitely took a more risky approach, I feel like, in terms of a Western audience. I don't know about the Japanese audience in terms of how much they're enjoying it, but Western fans definitely aren't as keen to this show as I am, and I get that. Obviously, it has a dedicated kind of like fan base, but that fan base isn't mainstream in any capacity. But in some ways, it's always fun to have those shows that are kind of like, there's a niche audience, a little group of people who really enjoy it. But you can say that if stuff like this was near the beginning, probably would have been a bit more popular right off the get-go. But hopefully over time, this will kind of like gain a cult following that gets bigger and bigger with time, which honestly, based on where I'm seeing these later episodes go, I could see it getting recommended quite a bit. It's just a matter of if people can get past the 3-episode rule, which a lot of people follow. For me, I enjoy the first 3 episodes, but not everyone will. This episode, though, definitely feels rewarding. It feels like payoff, and it feels like a lot of things, not only just with the current actions are being explained, but even past actions with how characters are being interacted with. And getting more information on our boy before he entered that coffin is a great change of pace, I have to say. Overall, I enjoyed this episode. The sound effects, I have to say, really took me by storm. The swords or the electricity, the blasts of like almost magic-like abilities, they had some great sound effects. It didn't feel like stock sound effects, which you typically hear in these types of shows, and even if they were, they did something to them to make them sound like we were a part of the scene, which honestly, I haven't complimented the sound effect design in this show, I think, ever, but that was the star of the sound design in this episode, in my honest opinion. Voice actors on point, but sound effects, really solid as well. Really excited to see where they're going to take it next week, but of course, as always, let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? And where do you think it might go next week? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, show your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.